They are, Rod. Look, it's back to where it used to be. This is the great Mr. Green's rod, which is now just says on the butt, Freddie Green. It's the last time this rod cast a line here was 1959, and now I'm coming back again after all these years to catch the fish that I didn't catch on that occasion. I did see people catching fish, people who were much better anglers than I was, and I'm going to see if I can catch something similar today. If I was just to catch a bream, I've never been terribly impressed by bream on still waters, but on rivers they're different. They're a different species, and even if I get a 3-pounder, I'll be happy here today. And here comes the sun. Come on now. An eel. This is about the size of the eel my friend caught, and I was so jealous of him when he caught it 60 years ago nearly, and now I've caught one the same size. Fantastic. I've just right, I'll just do that. Okay, and I'll slip him back. It's going to be a bit messy. An eel. Off you go. Hey. Fantastic little fish. I want one maybe 5 times as big.
Probably would do if you press correctly, then it's going to put him under pressure straight away, but they're not. They're just backing off and giving him an easy time, whereas you look at Nigeria, they want to go and press high up the pitch if they can. That's what they did second half against England at Wembley.
Nigeria have the ball now. Tabo wins the free kick.
Nigeria, they want to go and press high up the pitch if they can. That's what they did second half against England at Wembley, and they were a much better team.
Of the game, a few niggly fouls just creeping in, and most of them going Nigeria's way.
Yeah, there's no right at centre. He doesn't even test the goalkeeper. I'm sure that he had the instructions. I'm sure Croatia had the instructions.
Come on. Yeah.
The goalkeeper, just make him something to do because he will be very nervous.
Managerial, senior managerial experience, so inexperienced goalkeeper, inexperienced manager as well.
Oh, that looked good, didn't it? That looked very good. I thought that was going to be it.
Came in at the last moment.
Fuck.
Squad know that. This squad is very experienced anyway, so it's not
It just went down and just stayed. It had to be a 4, maybe 5 pound bream, surely. Yes, I had a happy 2 seasons with this rod after it was given to me by Mr. Green, and then it had a terrible accident, and I broke the tip, and I didn't know anybody then who could kind of repair it for me. And anyway, I felt that 9 foot, it wasn't like the rods that the Bansard Angling Club top men were using, which was sort of like 12 foot. I needed a 12-foot rod, so I persuaded my mother that she could lend me the money and I could buy a 12-foot rod and I could retire the rod that Mr. Green gave me and not tell him what happened. So the rod went in a bag, broken, and it was maybe 30 years later I met Edward Barder, the great cane rod builder, and he made me a couple of wonderful rods, barbel rods, carp rods, and then after I'd known him for a few years, I just said, look, I've got this rod. I'm quite nostalgic about it. It was the first rod I ever had, and I caught my first fish on it, a gudgeon, and I caught perch and a carp and a wild carp. And I said, can you do anything with it? I've just got the butt, and the broken tip had somehow gone missing from the bag that I'd put it in. I must have tried to lash it together. Anyway, I gave it to him, and then I didn't mention it again, and he didn't mention it, and I kind of thought he must have forgotten about it. And 20 years later, that's this year, he suddenly said, what do you want written on the butt of your original rod? And I couldn't believe it, he'd done it. And I just said, just put the name Freddie Green. There's a linnet at the top of the hawthorn. He's starting to sing his sweet song. My chief recollection is that the landscape was just so completely different from wherever I'd fished at home. Just sort of small, little, quite fast little streams, rivers like the Mole, and in deep valleys, lots of hills. But of course here it's much more open. I mean, it is rolling sort of behind us, low hills, but yeah, it was a bigger sky. It just seemed to go on forever. And the river just sort of meandering through this very gentle landscape. I liked it. The fact that it seemed like you could have walked along it all week and it would have remained the same. But then I stopped sort of noticing the surroundings because the secretary, Fred Jones, was beginning to catch some fish, and sort of word came along the bank that Fred was doing well and he was going to probably outdo any of the maestros of the local club. And I can't recall whether he did actually win the match. I think he did. Anyway, he caught £40 of bream. He must have won the match, surely. Or he got best individual catch anyway. And he won a rod. Yeah, there were some good prizes that day. I remember being very envious of the prizes that were handed out. And Fred won a rod. And it was. I remember being allowed to sort of waggle it. And everybody saying, see, go and waggle it, and look, it's straight immediately. It was split cane all the way through, but it had a nice sort of quick action, fast action, very light, 12.5 foot. I think somebody mentioned the words or the term hollow built. I didn't know what that meant. But anyway, it was and then back in the coach again, except we all lined up by the bridge waiting for the coach to come, and it was late, and so everyone started to sort of chat about the day. We were leaning on the bridge parapet, brick bridge, and looking down at a girl about my age, 10 or 11, who was fishing, and that didn't seem as extraordinary as it seemed to me later on when I didn't, for 4 or 5 years later, I didn't see any girls fishing, but it was lovely to see this little girl who was so kind of keen. She was on her own too. Maybe Dad had gone down to the big tench swim or the big bream swim, and we were watching her float, and I wrote about it in. It was the shortest chapter in my second book, which was The Deepening Pool, and I think it's the best chapter in the book because it was about a very kind of, it was a nostalgic memory, but it was very vivid. This girl watching the float and people talking, and then suddenly, discussing the day, not really, being that interested in what was going on, and then the float moved, and everybody stopped talking, and everybody willed it to go down, and they'd been watching their floats all day. You just thought they'd been bored with watching floats, but everybody kind of was focused on this girl's, I think it was a celluloid float. You could get these sort of, it was bright red, quite fat celluloid float, but it just looked, go on, and everyone was willing it to go under it, and then and the girl leaned forward, and the conversation was silent, it stopped, and then everyone relaxed, and suddenly I noticed a tobacco smoke, people smoking pipes, everybody was smoking, and everybody got back to the conversations again, and the girl sort of relaxed and sat back in her little chair. It was a little camping chair she was sitting on, and she didn't seem to mind that there was this coachload of enthusiastic anglers just watching her float, not watching her, watching the float, and then we were looking around and thinking, where's that coach? And all of a sudden, it's moved again, and everyone went back to the float. It's got to go under, and we really thought this time, yeah, and it starts to slide, yeah, and she didn't pick up the rod, she almost picked up the rod because it stopped, and then the tension went out of the air, and then the coach came, and we all piled on after loading our kit in the back, and as we went away, the girl looked up and she smiled, and I waved, and that was it. And the sun was going down over the haven, and it was an amazing light, and that was my final memory of the place. And now, nearly 60 years later, I've come back, and now that little girl will be, she'll be the same age as me now, more or less, which is 70. I hope she caught a fish in the end. Maybe she's still catching fish. Maybe she's the demon angler of the haven now, known for her amazing abilities with tench and bream. I hope so. I've just moved into this new spot because I'm sure the fish I just saw rolling from further downstream was a tench, and I'm here at the tench pool. This is obviously a red hot tench pool, but the chances of me catching it now are fairly slim, and I've more or less resigned myself to the fact that there will be no tench, and and there will be no bream, and that's surprising because I thought bream would be, tench were going to be a tricky one to find anyway. River tench are never going to be easy, but bream are easy to catch. And although I've never been a specialist, I've never caught many bream in my long fishing life, but I didn't get one. I got small ones, skimmers, but that's not the same. So no bream, and some eels, which kind of was better than I did when I first came back in 1959, where I hooked and lost a bream. Anyway, so I've completed the circle, that long 59-year circle, because I really wanted to come back, and because I liked it so much after that first trip. I really enjoyed it, and I always vowed to come back. So here I am. It's taken me a long time, but I still haven't caught the bream like Fred Jones, the secretary of the Banstead Angling Club, who did so well. I thought I could emulate him, but I'm no Fred Jones. I'm just a common or garden, ex-carp angler, ex-barbel angler, not a bream angler. I mean, they're the creme de la creme. So no bream, but it's been, and certainly no tench, but it's been a lovely couple of days. I mean, we've, the first day we got here, before we brought any, just for the evening, we didn't bring any rods. We just walked the river. And the first thing I saw as we were coming down the lane to the river was a harrier, a marsh harrier, and I'm just about as enthusiastic about harriers as I am about crucians and barbel and perch. So that was fantastic. We watched it for quite some time. So we've seen harriers, we've seen sparrowhawks, we've seen skylarks, we've heard skylarks and sedge warblers and reed warblers. It's been lovely, and we've had some good meals, good barbecues around Fallon's campfire. He makes a good campfire, and we've had some good meals, and it's just been great fun, and just so wonderful to come back. I never actually believed I would come back, but and as far as I'm concerned, from my memories, it hasn't changed. So, and the bream are still here because I've seen them. Kev caught one, wonderful bream, and we know the tench are here because we've talked to one or two people who have also caught them and had caught a couple. In fact, yesterday before we got down to the river, and we got up at 5, but that's no good. You need to be on the river before first light, and perhaps that's what we should have done. But we'd had a good night before, and you don't want to spoil things by making it all too serious. And we still had a wonderful day by the river all day, and caught quite a few fish. But as I say, I caught some perch too. That was nice. That would have pleased me as an 11-year-old. I would have been delighted with those perch. But anyway, maybe we'll come again, and maybe we'll come again with a bit more of a plan, and we'll catch a tench and a bream. But if we don't, I don't care, because this has been a great return. This is the haven revisited, and I'm very, very happy with how it's turned out. So we come full circle and return to the beginning, and discover ourselves again, and know ourselves better. And I know now that I am not a bream angler, which is no bad thing. is a perch. See, I'm not a bream angler, but I am a perch angler.